don't have a lot of time. So I said, well, why don't we take the same short story and I'll just redraw it. I'll redraw the same story. So, and try to do it better. And I'm relatively happy with this. It's still developing, still getting better. So even in this first page, or this is page 2, I should say, it's relatively the same in terms of the layout. But I said, okay, I'm gonna try this. Is it better enough? It's not, this one is maybe a bad example because it's not as good as I want it to be yet on this page. But stuff like the perspective here on the house looks better. I don't like the way I shaded this, but that's, you know. This panel, I think, shows the most improvement. The hand looks better here. The shirt looks better here. Even the position of his body feels a little bit more natural. I tried to do something a bit different and more natural with his pose here. So these first couple of pages are relatively similar. But then once we get into the interior of the comic, this is where I started to my lack of ability when drawing this starts to show in that I'm not, and my impatience also starts to show here because I'm too impatient to finish quality pages here that are well researched and well laid out. I went in, researched images of dilapidated houses and came up with photo reference of, here's a dilapidated room that has some character to it. It's got some stairwell, it's got a little landing, it's got depth in these doors, and there's a, you know, I added the tricycle and some of the leaves and stuff. And there's wrought iron and there's design in this old house. So this right away adds some more character to the environment they're in. Again, I think that I'm doing too much of a profile-y static on these two moments here. And I liked this panel idea I had with this rat running that's backlit. I'm still playing with whether or not to ink this in solid. And I probably used too much space if I was going to critique this hardcore to say, well, this is too much. You know, I had another person critique this for me and they said, this is too much of a page to use up for something that has nothing to do with the story. It's just a beat where he's talking about something else and I'm just showing that there's a rat running through the house. And then once we enter the room, you know, I liked this pointing the gun at the camera kind of thing, but because this is a page on this side, I didn't like that the gun was facing out and you want the reader to go in with the reading, so I broke the panel again a little bit smaller, but had the gun facing inwards. A little bit more of a room reveal and a different angle on the dead guy and the vampire guy and the psycho drug addict, you know, freaking out. And I want some too. And then this is actually this page here, which it was the one that we're gonna ink now, which is just a more dynamic fight. Him re-entering the room. I liked this panel where Cactus is lighting his own cigarette, and then a different look at the freaked out drug addict going, what the hell are you guys? So that sort of recaps the look and the history of Benson. And Cactus, I think, just to show a good example of his current face design. You know, I'll go back to the first one. You don't even see his face. And you'll see the size difference here, and the line quality is a lot different. You know, it's a progression, I feel, in ability. Just in a couple of years. It's been only maybe two years that I've been drawing at this pace and trying to teach myself as much as I can, as fast as I can, how to ink, how to get perspective right, how to get body proportions right, and you know, I'm still learning, and I have a long way to go. But why not document it while I'm doing it, and maybe other people can kind of learn from some of those lessons that I was experimenting with along the way, like focusing on confidence in line weight, the lighting position, where the lights are in your scene, so that your shadows are all consistent, going the right direction, the layout of the pages, the use of negative space and composition, all of these things that come together and you just sort of figure out in time while you're developing your own style. One artist I showed stuff to early on, he immediately said, "Listen, kid, it takes years, if not decades, for some artists to find a style, and that's even with education in a like a paid-for university post-secondary education in art, fine art, or whatever. Whereas I'm literally going at this by myself and trying to teach myself while I go. So right here I'm already making mistakes because I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. So I'm just going to go in here and start laying down some of these lines. Or I'm getting text messages now. Thinking about where the light is in the room. I mean, obviously, lines in the bottom might be a little thicker because the light is usually coming from above. Also, I'm kind of learning to battle, with the consistency of my ink, and I'm finding sometimes, like I just experienced there, that I see now it's too thick. The ink comes off the brush a little dry, and I don't like that. It's a little bit difficult to kind of get the right ink consistency. So I've already made a couple of mistakes here. I'm going to fix with some whiteout because I'm not paying attention. I don't want that top line to be that thick, but I kind of screwed it up. I'm just going to make a little bit of a shadow there. So what I'm doing with this second pad of paper here and the water is trying to get the right consistency of ink so it flows off in the right consistency and the right kind of amount of water in the ink and on the brush, so that it flows off the brush nicely onto the page without skidding and becoming dry looking. Like it's literally like a dry brush technique that sometimes is desirable, but I don't want that usually. I want it to have a nice smooth edge to it. So sometimes when I sit down and start to approach a page fresh and I'm not warmed up, like I should probably warm up and do something else, ink something else first, I'll start with something that isn't that important or can kind of get hidden with the rest of the page to try to get into the groove as quickly as possible. And I try to work from the upper left down when it comes to inking, because then you're not skidding and messing up your ink as you go. One thing I've been really working on or trying to figure out is my style for eyes. And stuff like eyes and hair, I think, are where an artist is really going to show his or her style. Not just in how they do faces or how they shade, whether it's cross-hatching or anything like that, but the way that they do eyes and hair kind of really shows that, what is their style, along with everything else, obviously. But I'm kind of coming to a consistent look with Benson and the other characters in the story. And what I was finding with some of the other test pages I was doing is I had started to get to a place where I was comfortable with Benson's face look, but I was literally doing other characters in the scene. If they were based on a photo reference, I would do their faces much more realistic looking. I would give them, all the definition in their eyes and everything, in their eyelids, where Benson's a little bit more open. You actually don't see his eyes connecting on the sides and stuff like that. He's almost like a little bit more anime. They're big, too big for his face. So I'm trying to carry that over with the other characters in my drawings to kind of have a consistency on the page, and carry that through the comic.